even when you're certain you know what the root of your problem is, I would say you may not be right, so you may want to open to other possibilities. And when you do that, truly miraculous things can happen. So let me give you a version of a story that I've shared before to tell you what I mean. I had a man come in who had PTSD, and he was certain it was because of what happened when he was fighting in Afghanistan. And he had done work on this using all kinds of wonderful tools, and he had gotten some relief, but it really wasn't everything. And we found out, and this is a version of the story, I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than this, but we found out that he was certain that the root where his PTSD and his fear of his terror and his needing to be secure and his panic attacks all were related to this. And we found out that that in fact wasn't the case. And that in fact what happened in Afghanistan was an echo of something that happened earlier. And we found out that the earlier place actually wasn't even something that happened to him. So you can believe it was another lifetime or imaginal, it doesn't matter. We said the most useful story is not going to be a story where you're the main character, but it will have the same kind of themes. And we found out also, of course, because you may have listened to this in another tape, that it was a story of betrayal. And when we found out that when we had him drop into I betrayed a trust as opposed to his reactions to the loud sounds and the terror of that, he had a whole different sensation, which was that his throat started to close up and he had excruciating pain in his right foot, which he thought was only because of an accident that happened that people told him there's no reason he should still be limping and having pain, but he still was. But of course he had no sense that his limping and the fact that he dropped something on his foot somehow was related to what happened in Afghanistan. It made no sense to him that those things somehow could be enfolded into the same story. But when we found this story of betrayal, we found out that he was in Germany in 1917 leading a whole group of soldiers, and he was leading them and he got distracted by something, and which doesn't really matter. And then the soldiers kept walking into a clearing and they were ambushed, and he's trying to get to them and scream at them to stop, but he can't stop them. And he's thinking he's a terrible leader, and he takes out his pistol and he shoots himself in the foot because if they ever get found, he wants to be looking like that he wasn't a bad leader, but just was someone who was like hit by the shrapnel or whatever. So we said, well, you have a problem here, and the problem is you believe you betrayed a trust, so find the souls of these men, and you're going to have to listen to what it was like for them. And he thought they were going to really go after him, which I've said before, if you listened to this story before. And they're all laughing, and they said, like, we forgave you 100 years ago. Well, I mean, this was basically about 100 years ago when we did the session. And they said, we had to learn that just because you didn't tell us to stop, that we weren't supposed to be lemmings, and we could actually, say, this is probably a really bad idea. So we had to learn that, and the only way we were going to learn it was to do this mistake that, of course, ended us up dead, but on a soul level, the thing that was horrific, of course, on a whole other level, was a way of learning something, at which point he lets out this big sigh of relief. And then he says, oh my gosh, I'm realizing something. This thing I think was a problem. This came to him actually during the session. He said, I actually unconsciously put myself into this exact same position they were in because I wanted to know what it was like for them to be in the situation where they were soldiers and there was nothing they could do about it. I put myself into the same situation, except of course I didn't die in that situation, but I experienced all their horror. And I'm realizing now it was just my way of trying to be empathic and really understand from the inside out what it was for the people I believe I victimized. And then, even though he'd done a lot of really good somatic work with something called EMDR and emotional freedom technique, which had given him some results, and even with us, when we found this, the rest of the symptoms went away. So I would say, open to all possibilities. And when you open to possibilities that never may have occurred to you, extraordinary healing sometimes can happen. And if you're interested in this way of working, of course, come to our lovely website, lifecenteredtherapy.com, and you can click on book an appointment. And if you're interested in how we open to all possibilities, you can read all about us, or you can find out stories like this and other stories if you just get our book, The 1 Hour Miracle, which is a really fun book to read and has all these wonderful stories in it. Thank you so much.